Hi, everybody. Welcome to Wise Talk. This is Mariposa's monthly leadership forum. Today we are pleased to have Steve Cadigan. Steve is a seasoned talent executive with over 25 years of global human resource experience and is the founder of Cadigan Talent Ventures. That's a Silicon Valley-based talent strategies advisory firm. Steve has practiced HR in the U.S., Canada, and Asia Pacific and has worked on many complex acquisition integrations around the globe. Most recently, Steve served as Vice President of Talent at LinkedIn for over 3 years and took the company from a private firm of 400 employees through an IPO into the powerhouse that it is recognized as today. Steve was instrumental in laying the foundation of LinkedIn's leadership team and culture, which has been repeatedly recognized as one of the core reasons for LinkedIn's success. Prior to LinkedIn, Steve served as Vice President of HR at Electronic Arts, where he was responsible for the games label group with 2,500 employees and a $2 billion revenue, as well as M&A integrations. Steve also helped Cisco's world-class acquisition integration team and previously held key HR leadership roles at PMC Sierra, AMD, Fireman's Fund, and Esprit. He has been repeatedly recognized for building world-class teams, cultures, and organizations. He has a BA in history from Wesleyan University and an MA in organizational development and human resource management from USF. So, I welcome you, Steve. I really appreciate you being here with us.
Thanks, Sue. It's awesome to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So we should also disclose that Steve and I have known each other for, I think, like 20 years it's been. I was trying to remember when you did your MA, and so we know each other from Cisco, and I remember I learned a ton from Steve because he was so adept at doing all the M&A integration, and I still use things I learned from Steve now. So I really appreciate you being with us today. So a couple things I want to point out, and just housekeeping things. So before we get into dialogue, I want to give you a heads up that you're all on mute right now, and when we get to the Q&A period, Allison, who's womaning the phones here, she will take you off mute, and we'll call for questions. We are recording this session, and it will be on our website possibly by tomorrow, but definitely by Monday. If you don't want to speak up and ask a question of Steve during the call, you can email me, and please do that at sueb@mariposaleadership.com to ask a question, and please label it Wise Talk question because I'm really not looking at my email too much. I'll glance over there every so often. All right, so let's get started. So Steve, tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, because I know that you're speaking a lot and you're advising, and how did you make that transition from being inside to outside?
Sure. So probably for about a little over 2 years now since I left the world of having a job and working for an organization, I've taken some time and tuned what I want to do and how I want to do it. And I think that it's probably best captured, Sue, if I say that my mission right now is to try to help organizations build what I call compelling talent solutions. That I think the organizations, particularly in Silicon Valley, are really, really waking up to the realization that your value is largely created from your talent, and that the world is increasingly transparent, and that it requires organizations, and this is a great pressure point, it's requiring organizations to be great at being a place where people want to spend time.
Right.
And that means having better leaders and having a better culture. And so there's a lot of folks who weren't prepared for this shift, and it's happening pretty quickly. So that's a lot of what I spend time doing, is helping organizations that are wanting to differentiate themselves and wanting to distinguish their cultures and build something special. But also I like to get out, and I was in Spain a few weeks ago teaching at a few universities and getting to learn and meet with entrepreneurs around the world and understand some of the challenges they have in places where you have 30% unemployment, which is very different than we have here. So it's been very different. It's been a great change for me, for sure.
Good. That's great. I know you're a big Giants fan too, right? You excited about this upcoming season?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. You get to do more of that, I would assume.
It's going to be hard to beat last year, but yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's talk about some of these, what I would call, and I know you call traditional recruiting and hiring processes, because I know that really is your specialty. And so I guess the question I have is, let's talk about what would you consider traditional, and why are people still doing those things? I guess is the best way of just getting it out there.
Yeah, well, I got to first just be really honest in expressing my frustration that if I look, if I go back to something I just said, which is, and I believe we probably have everyone on this session who's down is sort of the choir. People get it. The talent does drive value creation. What I don't understand is why it's always the last thing on the agenda for an executive team. Why boards of directors of organizations don't have people who have a sweet spot, powerhouse muscle of understanding talent. And why the systems that are the people systems are the afterthought, bolt-on piece of crap systems that are part of the ERP solutions. And so, I mean, as a whole, I think this is it's a real disappointment to me that I keep challenging talent leaders and executives. Like, if you really believe this is how you're going to win, like, why is it the last thing on your agenda? Why don't you have more people who really care about this? And honestly, it's not about human resources owning it. It's about the whole organization owning it. But I rarely see the right investment of priority, attention, and time. And recruiting and building your organization, I think, is one that is still really in its infancy of what it can be and what it could be. And so we still have this, I have a need, I put a job description together, I go hire a recruiter, and they go hunt for talent. And I'm not seeing, unfortunately, a lot of change in that. And whilst LinkedIn has been a huge disruptor in some regards, it's really still, it's broadened the opportunity to go hunt. It's made the hunt a little bit easier. But I'm not sure that we've seen a real breakaway in terms of, okay, you can help me find people, but how are you really helping me find the right people? And that's, I think that's one of the things when I'm looking out there talking to companies who are looking at building solutions that are trying to help. This is where I'm starting to see the tide turn a little bit, which is, gosh, we got all this big data. We have all these new insights. Should we apply that in ways that are going to offer us meaningful insight to really, be like, okay, let's say if we understand who the superstars are in our organization, how do I know where to go find more people like those? In ways beyond just where they went to school, what languages they speak, what their ages, what their ethnicity is. Like, there's some magic that we're still, I think, really far from being able to realize. And some people can call it Moneyball. Some people can refer to it differently. But the problem also is, and there are several. So one is I'm not seeing innovation in this space, and it's not a priority for organizations. And also that it is something that should be the biggest muscle in any organization. If you're in the Valley, the biggest thing you need to be great at is building a great team. So why are you shoving that off on the recruiting organization when it should be the core responsibility and the biggest muscle that you're working on? And it's an ownership issue too. That I think it's a priority and it's an ownership issue. And I'm not seeing a lot of organizations. And I got to say, one of this, and this was more, I think, an act of necessity when we were at LinkedIn, that we were facing more sexy brands with bigger comp packages, and it forced us to have to innovate. Like, why does someone want to come work here, and how are we going to realize the scale of that? And it required sort of an all-in approach. And it's the first time I'd ever worked anywhere where it was the number one priority for the entire time I was there. It may still well be the priority that we got to get world-class people in here at scale really quickly. The only way we're going to do it is if it's the number one priority for everyone, not just the recruiters.
Right. Okay, so let's take a couple of things you said, because you said a lot. I want to just zero in on culture, and I want to zero in on let's zero in on the recruiting for a second, because there's a couple of things you said that are really important, and that is that LinkedIn really didn't change certainly the milieu. What it changed was it allowed talent to be more accessible. Okay.
Correct.
Yeah. So that's good. That's a good thing. But
yep.
Why is it that so let's go back to sort of the soup. Why is it that executives, let's say, and managers aren't putting talent? Number one, are they merely directing their recruiters to go look for it? I mean, why aren't they putting it number one? What's your thought about that?
I think this is really just more an evolution that people are continuing to perpetuate, which is, recruiters should be the ones recruiting, and I should be building product, addressing my development deliverables or selling product and so forth. And that's not necessarily my main responsibility. And I think where you're starting to see people awaken to this concept that no, this is the most important thing. I remember sitting with Jeff Weiner in the early phases of him being the CEO of the company, and he sort of had his head, forehead in his hands, and he was sort of wringing his forehead, and he's like, Steve, because all I do is deal with people issues all day. And I just like, yeah? And isn't that what you should be working on? It's like, isn't our job, Jeff, is to make this the most compelling, to build the most compelling team and to block and tackle all the people issues to realize a greater outcome. And I don't know that I really can diagnose why are we here, but I think we need more case studies and proof points to show that when you do go all in, and you have to go all in to compete, I think, effectively for the best talent, good things start to happen, and you start really seeing the power of full commitment to talent and full commitment to making this a core element, and to jump into this element of culture. I think that in an increasingly transparent world, the better investment, rather than a huge recruiting team or a set of really skilled recruiters, is to try to make your organization the desired destination for the best people in the world. That does require, that's different from, I need a few hours to source every week, I need a few hours to interview every week. No, that's about what kind of environment, what kind of culture, what kind of org structure, what kind of communication plan, what kind of relationship I have with my employees, how I design my workspace. All those things contribute to a differentiator of helping answer the question, why does someone want to come work here? And that, if you do that well, and you know the kind of person you want, then you've got the benefit of the wind at your back and a magnetic pull, because this whole element of I have to go hunt for the talent, I don't think you're going to scale fast enough. And I've given this so much thought to over the last couple of years as I've gotten perspective, stepping back from LinkedIn and going through that, 400 to what seemed like in a blink of an eye, 4,000. How do we do that? How is it possible that you can actually build a business when your managers are spending 50, 60% of their time sourcing, interviewing, screening, and recruiting? And I think part of the answer to that, and what I'm seeing in some of the younger organizations, the earlier stage, I should say, that I'm working with, is that you've got to find your secret sauce. Why does someone want to come work here? For LinkedIn, it was, we want to help solve a problem which is unbelievably exciting, which is help people find their dream jobs. Does that excite you? Do you want to do that, or do you want to go work for these other web companies that are helping kids develop their short attention span capabilities? What do you want to do, right? Yeah. And separate yourself, and then if you do want to be a desired place, what kinds of stuff are you going to do in that company to make it desired? So, for example, simple things that we tried to do, which were the source of a lot of debate and discussion among executives, were, let's blow up that you have to be in your job a year before you can apply for something different. Let's send people on career bursts where I can't get a visa for you because you're 25 to go to Australia for a year, but I can send you there for 2 weeks. Would that blow your mind? Would that get you excited? Yeah, it would. Okay, so let's do that. Let's take someone from a county who has a passion for selling hot dogs on the weekend and have them run our food program, and let's look at this differently. And that's when people start believing, like, holy shit, you guys are real. Like, you really do want this to be a great place to be. And it's the transparency, Sue, that I think is facilitating this pressure point where you have to be really a great place to be, because people have choice in the Valley. They have choice.
Right. And there's a lot of, there's, of course, if you looked at LinkedIn, trying to distinguish you versus other companies like LinkedIn, everybody has free food. Everybody has, game rooms, whatever. So there's got to be, and those are just artifacts, right? They're not necessarily. They definitely represent culture, but that's not alone going to get someone to come. Even the ideas you just stated about are creative. Like, oh no, you can't get a visa at 25. I didn't know that. Yeah, I can't get a visa at 25 to go to Australia, but you can go there for a couple of weeks. Great. Would that be interesting to you? Would that be enticing to you? So obviously you did a lot of, you and your team did a lot of empathy building, understanding what people want to be able to even come up with these ideas.
Yes, and that's the key, Sue. What you're talking about is a listening strategy, okay? Now, that's, what worked at LinkedIn is not going to replicate and shouldn't replicate in lots of organizations around the world. So I was at this very large water and sewage distribution company in the UK a few months ago. Now, water distribution is going private, and they're terrified because they've had a captive market and they've had a captive employee population. They've got to differentiate, and they're like so scared, like, oh my gosh, how are we going to keep people? We're the sewage business. I'm like, no, you're not. You're in the make the world safe business. Right. That's the business you're in. And they're like, oh yeah. So get behind that and get people believing in that. But I said, but what you really need is you to ask people, like, what kind of place makes your heart sing? Yeah, I've never. Morning. Yeah. Yeah, and at LinkedIn, I've worked at places prior to LinkedIn where you never ask the question, is your career going at the pace you want it to? Are you growing? You learning? You making an impact? You liking what you're doing? We started asking those questions, and when I was at some companies, like, we didn't want to ask that question because we kind of knew the answer. It wasn't one that we wanted to hear, and that's really, I think, very critical right now because, and it's this new relationship. I do believe the employer-employee relationship is changing. I think the power is shifting to the employee, and maybe we are in a little bit of a bubble here in the Valley. I do think it's starting to expand it. People have more information, they have more choice, they can decide where they want to go to. So, and that starts to get us into a new territory, which is brand, which is right. Brand and culture. And I think your employer brand right now in a place where that's growing, if you're experiencing growth, I would argue is almost as important, if not more important, than your product brand, because I, as a consumer, want to buy from somebody who's treating their employees well and is providing a good work environment, and it's now becoming a core strategy, and you can't spin your brand anymore. Your brand is the collective voice of Glassdoor, Twitter posts, Pinterest, Facebook, LinkedIn, blogging, and all this other stuff. And that's all the creation and the culmination of the manifestation of the voice of your employees.
Well, the interesting thing about LinkedIn is that you ate your own dog food. I mean, your brand is also your product, so that was that's not always the case. But you guys had pressure to live your brand, live your product, because you were using it constantly to do your own recruiting. So it puts you in an interesting position. So let's. I want to ask you one more question, and then I want to open it up to the group. We'll probably do that twice on the call. So I know that when you and I have talked in the past, and by the way, if you guys haven't figured out, I mean, Steve is sort of like an idea junkie. I mean, he's got ideas. We'll probably come up with 5 new ideas today that we'll want to go do, right? So the two of us together are like, crazy, too many ideas. But one of the ideas that you and I were talking about last time we conversed was this idea of hiring differently, and particularly that we should be giving many more internships and we should be hiring people that way. So could you talk a little bit about that? I think that's it's an obviously good idea, but it still isn't done that often. So
this is probably the area that I'm most excited about. If I think about, we talked about the traditional model of, a hunter goes and finds, a candidate. Inherently, I think recruiting is broken because the interview process it's been proven time and time again, it's not the best indicator of job performance and success. For me, the best hires we made are the ones that we hired through internships, where the candidate is interviewing you for 2.5 months and you're interviewing the candidate for 2.5 months. You're trying it on. Now, there's all kinds of, if you extend that on to the professional realm of an intermediate, a senior, a manager, director plus, things get a little bit more challenging because now you've got medical insurance questions and fears. You've got, if this doesn't work out, why should I really try this? There's risk involved. But honestly, if I look at the model that work best is, if you want to get out, if you want to win the war for recruiting, you have to change the game. And I think at LinkedIn what we did was we moved technical recruiting out of the realm of let's go in the open market and let's build our own talent. Let's grow it. Let's start on the new grad campus and then we're going to grow. And you have to
develop it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Let's grow. Let's hire on campus. Let's do internships and let's grow talent. And that's a big shift. And not everyone's ready for that. And I would say you need to be around 1,000. You need to have a dev team of at least 250 to 300 before you want to start tackling that. However, if I look at professional sports and what I think we in professional world should borrow is this whole concept of a farm team. And this is an area that I'm starting to get excited about and looking at. There's a place out there from between the university, between the corporation, that's kind of a quasi boot camp farm system where you've got your people in transition wanting to learn and grow and develop, wanting to meet new people, build their network. And there's a nest of opportunity there where I think, bigger organizations or a venture capital firm, for example, or private equity can have these folks solving problems, but also, coming off of the crazy high of we just won IPO and I need to have my life back kind of thing. But also vetting the talent. There's new models. And so that's one. The other new model that I'm starting to see, and it's, Zappos is always like, oh my God, everything's Zappos. So and they're getting to be the Google of like everything's cool if it has Zappos on it. But they announced that they're doing away with job postings and job descriptions, and all they're doing is building communities. If you're interested in being part of Zappos, we'll join these communities and we'll get to know you, you'll get to know us.
Okay.
And they've learned that, every time you post a job, you're sending more rejections than your acceptances, and that's not a positive outcome. How about we reframe this? We don't post a job. We post kinds of jobs that we have, and we start meeting people and building community around that. And that's going to be interesting to see. I've not heard after the implementation of this approach sometime over the last 6 to 9 months. I've not checked in to see how it's going.
Cool. Yeah, those are both, well, obviously they're both great ideas. And then there's also just internships. You talked about the minor league and how this in-between thing, which I think is awesome.
Yeah.
There's also just getting more recruiting. Like, let's just take a bigger company. I mean, 4,000 to, there's tons of big companies. Just getting more interns and having a program that is much more robust.
Right.
I think would be good. And then what about, how do you see universities? I mean, there's a lot of companies that have universities so there's already kind of a built-in way to do this that could maybe be the starting blocks for this. Do you see that? Do you see that happening? Do you think that could be a way to kind of make the bridge?
I do, and it's not. This is an area where I thought I would see more acceleration than I have. So I've spent a fair amount of time with San Jose State University. They're trying to reinvent their curriculum. They're trying to think, how do we become more relevant? And my point of view on this is, I think there's an opportunity for universities to become the early stage learning and development faculty for organizations, and then have some of the talent in organizations become sort of visiting professors with the university, and you've got this shared arrangement. I haven't seen that take off more than bibs and bobs, like a little bit here, a little bit there. I haven't seen someone say, let's build that strategy. And no organization have I ever worked at where anyone's going to say anything but, yes, we need to be close to the universities. Yes, we want their best students. But I've not seen real full commitment to that at scale. Mm-hmm.
At scale. Well, actually, it's interesting when when I say university, I meant inside organizations, but I also, of course, you took it as real universities. So there's also this other whole thing around. There's a lot of companies. Well, there's a lot of the big companies have actual universities. Lockheed, HP, GE. They have universities within their worlds. It seems like they're positioned to make this bridge. Instead of starting from scratch. And a lot of times those universities are basically L&D. They have the very technical aspect of it. I know HP has a lot of technical courses that they teach to H people and within HP, but then they have lots of certifications, for example, and those certifications that they're giving out, Cisco has this, HP has this. Those certifications, those people are prime, obvious people to hire as well. Yep.
Well, I've got a couple of different points of view on that one. There are some professions where actual technical knowledge is really meaningful and relevant, and there are some organizations where your experience working in different parts and the peripheral muscle and vision you have around working in my organization is more valuable to me than a specific knowledge of a certain task or something. And that's why I've always been a huge fan of rotation and movement and growth, and I think that got beat into my head by all the GE people that came to Cisco when I was there, saying we need to do this, and there were some pros and cons to that. But I think this is the challenge when it depends on what phase you are in your evolution and how much buffer you have for learning versus making a difference. But I fundamentally believe that people want to be in organizations where they're learning and growing and motivated and excited about doing something that makes a difference around people that they can learn from. And so it doesn't need to be a university. But it does need to be an environment where that is the priority. And you spend time in these bigger organizations like these big banks, and banks is probably the most under siege industry on the planet right now with Bitcoin and Google Wallet and Apple and all this other. It's getting assaulted everywhere, and they're kind of deer in the headlights when it's it's probably if they built the foundation of, hey, we need to evolve always, it's going to be easier to make a transition rather than, what's the skill we need in 5 years? Let's put a L&D program in place and so forth. So I think there's a certain amount of, this is what I think when I was talking back to the whole university concept. When I was talking to San Jose State, I said, the thing that you can do to help me is deliver someone who's really versatile, agile, and doesn't need a job description when they come into my company, that they land and they're used to crazy and they love it. That's what I want. So I'm not saying teach a class on that. Maybe it's how you structure the whole campus experience, a little bit chaotic. Help people figure this stuff out, because when they land in my organization and it's growing and it's a startup, there is no plan. There is no set of instructions. And I want people who can sort of bring, something from nothing.
Yeah, nice. So we've talked, in the last half hour, we've talked about things that are more traditional and things that are new ideas, riffing off of that, and completely new ideas like the minor league. So let me just go over them before we open this up. So we talked about Zappos and building communities. We talked about rotations, of course. We talked about, traditional internships. We talked about this in-between minor league kind of internship. We talked about universities, and we talked about internal universities. So those are like 6 ideas we've just touched on. So let's open it up for questions. I'm also going to look at my email here to see if anyone has emailed a question. So who has a question or comment for Steve? Just say who you are and go ahead. Anybody? Anybody have a question or comment?
Yes, sir. This is Bob Hannon calling from Tokyo again.
Oh, hey, Bob.
Hey, how are you? I have a quick comment and a question. The comment is several years ago when we were trying to figure out how to motivate innovative companies here in Asia, they kind of suffer from what they call this Asian value debate. They don't always accept what we think is right, but we introduced a company in the Bay Area called Granite Rock. I'm not sure if Steve is familiar with them, but they put together a company that it was world-class and world competitive, and they did just about everything he described. I know Stanford did a case study on them too, but I'm not sure if he's familiar with them, if you'd like to check out and see how they're doing today. But they were quite innovative in their employment, and they had 100 teams going on at all times for a 300-person company that they were designing their own careers, their own pathway through life. So if you'd like to check them out, maybe it'd be helpful for him.
Thanks, Bob. I haven't heard of them. I will definitely check them out.
Yeah, Granite Rock in Watsonville, California. I'm curious. Again, I represent this Asian side, and I'm just curious your experience. How does this innovative mindset, matrix mindsets work in a foreign country, especially today? I know a lot of people in the Valley are pressed for global teams. So how does this fit in with what you're saying?
Great question.
I had the good fortune of living in Singapore for a couple of years, and I felt like that was just dipping my toe in the water of raising my awareness of, and even just saying Asia is really overstating the depth of complexity of, managing workforces in South Korea to managing the folks in Australia and New Zealand. I think, so first off, if we're talking about growth, if we're talking about culture, if we're talking about recruiting, there is no one-size-fits-all. And I think what I would say is I would take the fallback position of I am a believer in microcultures. I am a believer that there is a core that should be pretty rock solid. That's your global frame of reference. But how you apply that is going to need to be different in places where people don't want to be moving around so much. People want to have a little bit more structure, and they want to know a little bit more clearly, and that may be okay. And I think this is one of the challenges I've found in Silicon Valley is that I'll just say it. When I was at LinkedIn, I was the only person on that executive team who ever lived and worked outside of the U.S. So, and that was a huge frustration for me when we were dealing with issues of differences out there in the world, because we have this one point of view that we project. This human nature is how we see things, and how other countries see things are similar. And so I guess it's a two-pronged answer to the question, which is it doesn't port everywhere, and I'm sure there are places where it's different. My favorite example from my Cisco days was when the company implemented a manage out the bottom 5% every quarter. And I was asked to go to South Korea because every quarter they weren't managing anyone out, because every new quarter someone new was in the bottom 5%, and the same person was never in the bottom 5%. So I went up there and said, well, guys, what's going on? Like, headquarters is like curious why you're not firing anybody. And they said, we just sit around and vote who's going to be the bottom 5% this quarter. So we just rotate it. And I thought that was the most brilliant strategy I'd ever heard. But they just completely cracked it. It just didn't work for them. I was like, we think this is such crap that we just sort of, who wants to take the bottom 5 this quarter? Okay, I will.
That's awesome. That's great. Bob, do you have a follow to that?
No, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Bob has been a big fan of Wise Talk. Thanks for being on the phone, and especially because it's pretty early there, right?
No, actually, it's great this time. It's from 9 to 10 in the morning, so I'm very chipper.
Yeah, okay, that's right. That's right. Last time I think it was early, yes. Great. Who else has a question or comment? Anybody? Okay, so we'll do this again before we're done in about 10, 15 minutes. So I'll send you could put everybody back on mute. And again, you can always ask a question. You can always ask a question via email. So let's talk a little bit about some companies that you're seeing are doing some innovative things and what we would call disrupting both, let's just call it talent sourcing. And, you talked about LinkedIn a bunch. Are there some other companies that you can point to? And you don't even necessarily need to say the companies. I can maybe say if they're in tech or whatever. But, some ideas that you're seeing that you're really excited about?
Yeah, well, the first one, and those of you who've done recruiting for software engineers have probably heard of it or come across it, is this concept of, and Guild is one of these companies that is found a way to go to the open source coding communities that exist, the GitHubs of the world, and build algorithms that actually produce quality measurements and ultimately back into rankings of the quality of the programming code for developers. And they add in layers of, well, how dense is it compared to someone who did something similar? How often is it borrowed? How often do people comment on it? And they back into a ranking of the quality of the code. Now, it's not, there are still elements that need to be addressed, and there's still holes, and I don't know that, we're going to be able to measure charisma and things like this through people's code, but imagine how this plays out. And this is where I get really excited. The only professions in the world today where we really know everything, most everything about the performance of the professional is a salesperson and a professional athlete. And a professional athlete, do they play well at night? Do they play well in the morning? How injured do they get? Are they a scorer? Are they someone that likes to give assists? Does the team tend to win when they're on the field or lose when they're on the field? Are they, how often do they hold on to the ball? All these things. The NBA has installed 36 cameras over all the NBA facilities, and they know things like when LeBron James gets the ball, does he usually go right or does he usually go left? And how many dribbles before he shoots? And just all this data, which is so fascinating. And baseball's been, on this concept for a while.
Huge. Yeah,
and so think about if I'm a developer and I know my ranking as a Python engineer. And again, it's not anywhere close to being perfect. Imagine what that means to me come salary review time, or what it could mean to me, that I know I'm a top 10 developer on the planet. Is that going to impact my relationship with the organization that I'm working for, or how I think about my career? Oh, yeah, it is. And this is the kind of data that we're starting to be able to, extract and provide some relevance to, which could really start changing the game. And and I'm also starting to see a friend of mine's got a survey company, and they're actually thinking about asking different kinds of questions to employees than, are you clear on the mission? Are you clear on the vision? Do you like your manager? Are you, do you like working here? Would you recommend this to the company? They're asking questions like, who do you go to for advice? Who's the person whose ideas you respect the most? And you're trying to, in a way,
getting a real person so they can track who the so-called mentors are.
That's right. That's right. And then you can, and this is where we can go spooky or we can go cool, depends on how you feel about this. But if you install cameras in your office, you know whose desk people are hanging out at more than others. Now, you're going to have to extract the M&M's dish or the, the candy jars from the equation, but why are people always at, Attar's desk? Like, what's Attar doing? Like,
right.
is he the hub? If he is, I don't want him to leave my company. You know what I mean? He may not be getting the best salary increases or whatever my messed up performance review system is, but that's meaningful information, really meaningful.
Yeah.
And we haven't been looking at things that way. So that is, that's getting me excited, because the more aware we become of our portfolio, the more knowledgeable we can be around trying to find the right folks to come in, or how, why is Attar so great and what made him great, and trying to unbundle that a little bit. It's pretty exciting,
So we're doing that anecdotally. I mean, people are doing performance reviews. They'll,
That's right.
the boss will say, hey, who is, they'll get feedback on somebody. So Attar probably the famous guy. It's probably known, but that obviously doesn't scale very well, and it's tedious. And in terms of getting that information, extract that information, and obviously you could get it different ways. So I think that the value is there. It's just that trying to get the information is tough. And you mentioned Guild. Do you mean Guild, the company Guild, is doing this?
GILD, yeah. It's not the fashion
it's
one.
Not the fashion. Okay.
GUILD, yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That tells you where my mind's at, right? So make sure that we're clear on that. Okay, so that's a great example. So what are some other examples of some other companies that are doing some disruptive things?
So Pepsi, for example. Now, here's a huge monolithic company. One of the things that they're doing through a little bit of gamesmanship and then through a little bit of, borrowing out of the salespeople's playbook is creating a sense of scarcity. What Pepsi does now is start publishing how many people applied for this job and what the actual pipeline is right now. So we're looking for this many, manufacturing plant engineers, or we're looking for this many bottling, scientists. This is how many people applied. This is how many people we interviewed. And being more transparent around the actual process, which I think is really very, very interesting. And so if you find out, wow, I got an interview, wow, it's one of like 20,000 people applied for this thing. That's pretty interesting, and has an impact. And I also think it's starting to address the fact that people do want to know, they want to have more information, and they want to have a better sense of how am I being treated by this organization. And so that gets us into this other realm, which I think is one that we're overlooking because of our seduction with technology, which is big data really should be allowing us to spend less time looking at a phone and more time looking at a person with real intelligence that forges better personal connections. And there's a few organizations that I'm starting to see, and there's some search firms that are starting to realize that the tighter the personal connection, I think the greater the likelihood of there being something fruitful that comes out of that, whether it's a hire or whether that's a longer-term relationship. That, all these insights that we have are really there for us to take advantage of. And we have so much information, but I still, to this day, I get called weekly from headhunters, and they haven't even, it's not hard to find information out about me. And hey, would you like to go to New York? No. I've got kids. What do I want to go to New York for? Like, no, I don't want to do that. And why are you even bothering me? It's annoying. And this gets to one of the biggest challenges like LinkedIn has, is that their customers are polluting their product. Their lazy customers are sending out lazy, reach outs to people without even doing their homework. And that creates opportunity for people. If you are going to make a personal connection, you're going to do a little bit more homework. You're going to be able to do that. Right. I think that's what people want. This whole break that we're seeing, I think a breakdown in the sense of community that we live in, and we want to be part of something. We want a connection. And it's the organizations that I think are going to figure that out are going to see much greater success. And we tried pulling that off at LinkedIn. I'm spending a little bit of time with Eventbrite and Twitter, and they're coming up with some really interesting ways revealing interesting insights to the point where they're not only do they find out who used to work with you, but they're actually interviewing the people you used to work with before they even do an initial reach out. So they've got a whole portfolio of awareness of you, so they're more likely to land something that's going to be a better fit for you. You know what I mean?
Right. Yep. Let's shift over to search firms. You mentioned it, and of course, search firms, the good ones, good search recruiters are, whether they're in a search firm or on their own, have those connections. What needs to disrupt their industry? I mean, what do you see coming down the pipe with them? I don't see them going away. However, they may need to shift a bit in terms of how their value is to the process. Comment on that?
I think, yeah. So there is a huge market still for search firms. And search firms, the good ones, the good individuals. I mean, I'm more excited about individuals than I am about firms per se, and it's a pretty transitory profession to a certain degree. But one of the things that I start to see happening is that the power is definitely shifting to the candidate from the employer, and that search firms are going to be moving to be more agents than they are of the individual than they are of the companies. That's what I think is going to start to happen. And if you believe, like I do, that the nitrous fuel that rockets Silicon Valley is a software developer, we are close to, and trust me, I've had this conversation with a number of very senior engineering executives at a number of companies in the Valley who are contemplating full-time moving from being a head of engineering to an agent for developer talent to help them, find the right projects, find the right teams, find the right culture for them, find the right places. And that's where I'm seeing a little bit of a turn. And we're still early phases, so you're not going to see like these agents pop up. But the same way sports athletes have agents, I mean, these people are commanding huge comp packages. They're difference makers, and that's one of the trends that I think we're going to see is more. And there's one organization I'm working with now. It's very early days, but it's called, it's Talent Tribe, and Talent Tribe's trying to create a more authentic brand portrayal, helping organizations say, hey, you can't control this, but we can help you encourage your employees to sort of build, like, what does it really mean to work here? Like, strap a GoPro and some duct tape on someone's head and have them run around the office. That's more interesting than the glossy, overproduced Hollywood-esque, company pitch that sits on the website and the careers page. People, that's not, I don't think, what top engineering talent's really interested in. They want to know the nitty-gritty, authentic view. And so we're going to start to see more of that. You know what I mean? Yeah,
it makes total sense.
Yeah.
They do have ways to strap on those GoPros on helmets, by the way.
Yep. But even I did a workshop I was over at GoPro a few months ago.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you guys have this really cool asset as a product. And to your earlier point around one of the advantages we had at LinkedIn was there was this chemistry between what we were doing for the customer. It was the same thing we want to do for the employees.
Right.
I was helping them see, like, hey, you've got this whole lifestyle play. How does that look in the lifestyle of your employees, and have you really married that? And what they hadn't hit yet is a bad hiring quarter because they've had this huge inertia behind them. But now, you're cresting over 1,000 people. It's not everyone's knocking down your door now because it's a different experience, right? And so trying to find, like, okay, the coolness is going to have to be a little more than just we've got a great product. Isn't that awesome? You want to come here? Aren't we cool? We surf and we have GoPro. No, you're going to have to offer a little bit more than that because now you're at scale, and there needs to be more than just this initial love connection. It's got to be deeper.
Right. Nice. Okay. So last question that probably has a bunch of parts to it. So for the folks on the phone, we've got both people inside and consultants outside, search people. So what would you say to head of talent, head of HR, any managers on the phone, that the couple things that they got to start doing? Like what are some tips in terms of just like start here
Okay.
Looking at culture, because I know this is, as much as you're known as a talent source expert, you really, the reason why you're so good is because you see the big picture. And so I know the first thing you're going to say is, look at the big picture. But so what are some things?
So I think the very first starting point, I've actually written about this a couple of times, but the very first place that I would recommend if you're at a point where, okay, we are going to grow, we are going to need to ramp this recruiting engine up, the first thing that I would do is I would get all my leaders in a room and say, are we all clear on who we are as an organization? Why does someone want to come work here? And that may take a few weeks. It may take longer. We didn't have that question debate until we were 6 years old as a company at LinkedIn, because that's when we wanted to go from 400 to 1,000. And we're like, we're losing, guys are rejecting us, we're getting outbid, and everyone was telling a different story, and it was mass confusion. And finally we're like, okay, this is not about a knucklehead recruiter that we have. That's not it. And recruiting always gets shot. And by the way, if you look at who's running technical recruiting in the top companies around the valley, good luck trying to find someone who's been in their job 2 years, because all these people get a bullet to the head unfairly, I think. So the first thing that you do is you go and you sit with these people and say, why does someone want to work here? What assets do we have that differentiate us? What is our story? And what are you prepared to do as a leadership team to do this? Because this has got to be something we're great at. It's not, and position us as us, not HR. And this is where I find the organizations that struggle is, and I personally struggled with it myself. I said, okay, this is my problem to solve. And then finally realized I can't do this. It's going to need to be an entire organization. So you start with that. It's a very fundamental question. And it may seem that every organization that I've gone into where we've had this discussion, people assumed that everyone agreed, but they didn't when we really dialed down to it. So it's just a very simple, powerful starting point. And the second thing is, whatever is a priority for you, and this is, I will bless his heart, this man has stayed with me since I met him at LinkedIn. David Hankey said, if you can't measure it, you can't fix it. You make the process as transparent as possible. When we hit the skids at LinkedIn, I don't know if Kevin's on the line, but he experienced this process with me where we had to go in the CEO's office for 1 hour every day for 3 months to report on everything that was working and not working at every single stage of our recruiting process. And we wound up with something like 120 steps. And I will tell you, every day for 2 months we learned something new. And it was shocking to me. And so if this is the biggest, most important thing for you, find out ways you measure it. Things like, why did we cancel 7 interviews yesterday? Whose fault was it? Why is it taking 10 days from when someone accepts an offer to when they start? Or why did it, how come this recruiter is sourcing 20 people and this recruiter is sourcing 10? Or, everything, like stuff we didn't even know. And then we started to put recruiters and hiring managers through boot camp and training, and we started to realize, oh my God, the ones we thought were great are horrible. They don't know they don't even understand the company. And so that, you have to, if this is really the most important thing to you, answer that question and then start measuring it. And then lastly, I had to get in front of the company every other week and report on our results. Here's what we're doing. Here's what's working and what's not. And that accountability, oh boy, that'll motivate you if you got to get in front of your whole company and start talking about basically your report card every other week. It's pretty intense.
Right. Okay, great. That was great, Steve. So let's open it up for just a couple minutes before we end here. If anybody has a question, and again, you can still, in these waning moments here, you can still email me. Allison, go ahead and open it up right now. Anybody have a question for Steve?
Siri? It sounds like Siri. What's that?
Does anybody have a question for Steve? Anybody?
Sue, I don't have a question, but I do have a comment.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, it is. Sorry.
Okay.
I was very excited to hear Steve mention the fact about agents, special agents with individual, and we've seen this too, working with people from India and other countries that are extremely talented and with all advanced degrees, and have no idea where their next job is or what they're going to do or if they're even qualified. And we even thought about it ourselves, so I'm glad to hear him affirm this concept of agents for this type of positioning of people in their careers and giving them a future, not just a job.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. Well, thanks, Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hey, it's Sally Thornton. How are you guys?
Hey, Sally.
Sally, hi.
Hello. So fun to hear both of your voices. I love, obviously, disintermediation of traditional recruiting, because you guys both know me. I'm just curious, Steve, too, as we think, I love the idea, too, of the agents. I'm still struggling with the bell curve, right? Because I know software engineers are going to lead the pack, and I like that, you know, when things get really tight, that forces disrupting behaviors. But there's still this huge bell curve of other people who are not software engineers. I'm curious your thoughts when you look at executive recruiting, because I actually think the executive recruiting may go away. Like, I know that both, you know, the big firms like Korn Ferry and whatever are also coming up with other software to, you know, find other ways of making revenue in a traditional way. And I'm curious your thoughts on kind of traditional executive recruiting, ignoring the technical side just for a minute.
Yeah, I think that this is another big piece that is very absent today, which is just a coach, like a career coach, to help people think through, you know, everything from can I go a different direction? Can I try, you know, can I move my PR background into some kind of marketing or brand role or things like that? And this is what LinkedIn hasn't solved either, which is they've shown you that people can take a path, but they've not necessarily delivered a solution that says this could be your dream job, or these are people that can help you offer that. And so it may be sort of lighter weight coaching, Sally, that I start to see, because that's mainly sat unfortunately in the outplacement universe, right?
Yep, right.
And
what I'm starting to see a little bit, I'm curious what you're seeing, is that these, you know, if you sit at like a Cisco or an Intel, I would bet that there's probably people who maybe they're not called sort of career coach counselors, but navigators or accelerators, or people that are helping you think differently around doing, you know, you could try something different or try something else. And it's just been a taboo subject, unfortunately, for so long. Like, if you want to go do something else, like, oh, my boss is going to be pissed, my bonus is going to be less, I better wait till I get the bonus so you can have the conversation. And there's all kinds of territorialism that can, you know, come into play there. So I'm hopeful, and maybe this is the more optimistic guy in me, that we're going to see more coaching for the non-technical. That I don't know that will necessarily lead into agents. Some areas that are super hot, like marketing right now, is just incredibly hot. Social marketing and building communities is really, really hot right now. So that may be an area that follows. But I personally get pinged a lot. I'm sure a lot of folks on this call do, with, you know, friends, family, extended, you know, parents in the school district saying, hey, can you help me think about, I want to do something different. And this gets to probably what I think, you know, sort of the last comment I'll make is, which is, candidates have more information about companies, and companies have more information about candidates. So in theory, the efficiency of the recruiting universe should get to the point where people are just happier, because I got more information. I'm making a better decision.
Right.
But I'm not seeing that. I'm not seeing people loving their jobs more.
Yeah, there's a matching problem, too. A matching problem.
Yeah.
And there's the paradox of choice. Social data, too. Anyway, thank you both.
Thanks, Sally. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sally.
Well, Steve, thank you so much. I so much appreciate it. There's been a potpourri of ideas here. Just feel like a popcorn machine here. I love it. I've got 2 pages of notes. I'm sure other people do too. So again, everybody, you can get a hold of Steve. You can follow him on Twitter at @Cadigan, at CADIGAN, and is that the best way to get a hold of you, Steve, or do you want to give an email out?
You can find me. No, you can find me on LinkedIn. You could find me on CadiganVentures.com, Twitter. Okay. Yep. And thank you so much for the opportunity to be on your show. It's been great.
Sure. So everyone, next month we've got Lou Adler. He's the CEO and founder of the Adler Group and author of The Essential Guide for Hiring and Getting Hired. and he will have yet a different perspective. And so this year is all about talent development, talent acquisition. So we've got a great lineup of people. We had Liz Weissman last month, and we're having Steve this month. So we started out with a bang. So I had two of my closest friends in the business on. So I'm really happy to have you. I really am. So
you bet. And Lou's really funny too. So don't miss Lou.
Good, great.
Yeah.
So he's on March 30th at 3 p.m. So everyone, have a wonderful month, and we'll see you back again. Thanks again to Steve. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. Bye now.